Computer. Hello there, everyone. This is Joni from the GHAA, and this is our demo artist. This is Susan Kneeland, and if you've seen some of our other demos, you have seen her before. She is absolutely awesome.
Thank you,
And
Joni.
you are welcome, baby. And she will be here today doing a watercolor?
I'm doing a watercolor demonstration today.
So we are GHAA members, which is Greater Haverhill Arts Association, and GreaterHaverhillArtsAssociation.org is how you can get in touch with us. And we'll let you know how we get in touch with you later, too.
Okay.
I'm going to hand it over to my friend over here.
All right.
Well, take her away, baby.
Thank you, Joni.
You
and
are
thank
welcome.
you, Greater Haverhill Arts, for offering this opportunity to hopefully inspire you guys and hopefully gain a little more interest in the arts and the possibility of creating it and the availability of materials and instruction. I chose watercolor today because I haven't done it as a demo.
I was going to say,
on this program. I've done a lot of watercolor, and I have done a lot of demos in watercolor. Watercolor is hard to demo because you have to sit. I like to sit. You know, some artists lean their paper, but I don't work that way.
But lean the paper like up on the easel?
Yeah, some people will lean their easel a certain way. They do have watercolor easels. Yeah. It's tough because if you work wet, the watercolor drips. Yeah. Joni, I forgot to ask you if you have a hair dryer so I can dry in between.
I will go look for a hair dryer.
Okay. And I'll thank you. I forgot to ask
you. Continue on.
So that's another reason why when I go to do different demos, I usually won't demo in watercolor because the technique I use, I like to dry it in between. If I go out landscape painting, obviously I'm not going to take a hair dryer with me. I am patient and I wait for the sun to dry it. But I have such a lack of patience that if I'm going to go out painting, I usually will use oil paints or acrylic paints. So I mostly do watercolor in my studio. Today I brought a couple of examples of what my style looks like. Thank you, Joni. Everybody's style is different. Everybody's preference is different. I've had people say they just don't care for watercolor, how it looks. It's a personal preference.
Do you think people know, you know what, non-artists don't seem to know the difference between the mediums? Is that true? Do you find that true?
Yeah, sometimes. Usually if there's an interest in art for the person, they're kind of aware of what they like. But sometimes, I know when I first started, I wasn't always happy with the mark. Thank you. The mark that I was making on the paper. So I studied it for quite a while. I brought some examples of just some watercolor sketches. I'm here at Joni's studio today, but at my studio, a lot of times between classes, if I have a wait, I'll just stay and I'll do little watercolor sketches. I really liked the look of this boy. So between classes, I did this little watercolor sketch. So it's not a complete drawing. It's nothing for that I'd want to sell, or it's not even really complete, but it's just fun. So that's why I do it. I liked this one night and I had quite a wait. So I did a little interpretation of her, and if I get up close, I think you can see and maybe see the marks that I made on her, kind of the staining of the window and the suggestions back here of what was behind this woman. Let's see if you can see that. Another example is a little study that I did with a student.
That's cool.
At night, just a little night camping thing. We did it for his dad.
Did you take an actual photograph?
No, this was just out of my imagination. So it was just kind of like an easy piece for people to do. And it helped the student learn different techniques. Sure. He had painted with me before. This is an overworked sketch. So sometimes I'll get working and I go to move my marks around and I work it to the point where it is considered muddy. So if you look at some of the marks here, they're dirty, they're not that clean. This is one I'd call a learning piece because I'm always learning about how different colors stain. I never pre-draw. I don't like the look of graphite underneath my artwork, although master artists did draw, such as John Singer Sargent. When you look at some of his work, he was a famous watercolor artist and oil painter. And he, a lot of times, if you see his work, you'll notice that it has little pencil drawings underneath. That's just a little study. It's a face with wrong colors and correct values. Obviously, it's
With what, wrong colors?
incomplete. Wrong colors. I've got yellow, blue, and red only. So a lot of times I work in only yellow, blue, and red. And as long as you get your values right, the colors are going to be right.
I was going to say, it doesn't look like wrong anything.
No, because the values are right.
Yeah.
Beginning of a bird, and I added a little ink on that when I was showing a student how to do it. Another piece, just a sketch. And that's what I intend to do today. This is a sketch of a radish. I added pen and ink. If you look closely, you can see that I've outlined it a bit, and it's got little stipples and dots of ink. And this was kind of looking at a jug across the studio.
So what's stippling? Stippling is when
Stipple is when you take a lot of dots,
yeah,
and put them around until they make a picture or embellish a picture for shadows.
And the closer you put the little dots, the darker
It is, the more shadow you get. So today, I'm going to tell you a little bit about the paper, the watercolor paper, briefly. Watercolor paper is very different than regular paper. If you ever, in school, a long time ago maybe, or for me, tried to do,
just very recently.
Tried to do, yes, tried to do watercolor. Usually they're giving you regular paper, and so you go to start to put water on it, and the paper dissolves, it wrinkles, it rips, it tears. The reason for that is watercolor paper has one more component than regular paper. So regular paper is made out of wood pulp, typically, chemicals, wood pulp and chemicals, or recycled paper and chemicals. And when in the chemicals, they take acid and it breaks the wood pulp down, and that gets them to be able to make a lot of paper for less money, and it's thinner, but it's not absorbent, and it's also not able to take water. So the difference when they make watercolor paper, and the reason it costs more, is because they do take wood pulp, they do take chemicals, but they add one more thing that makes it absorbent, and that's cotton. So the cotton in the paper, when I teach my students to paint, I'll say, pretend you're staining a shirt and you're just directing the stain where you want it to go. Because that's really what we're doing. We're staining cotton and sliding the stains around. So the paper is more thick. A regular piece of paper is, say your computer paper, is probably, say, 15 pounds. The paper that I'm working on today is called 140-pound paper.
Must be really heavy, so.
Not everybody says that. 140 pounds, I believe, if I'm correct, is the pressure that they put on the rollers when they are making the paper. So it's thick. It's quite thick if you compare it to, you can hear it. It's almost like cardboard. I know that doesn't translate. Also, something that's important to know is when they take all this batch of wood pulp or recycled paper and cotton and chemicals, and they pour it down to be turned into paper, the rollers that they smush it through can either be heated.
The technical term, smushing.
The rollers can be heated, or they can be cold. If the rollers are cold, the paper's called cold pressed. It's flat, it has no sheen. If the paper's shiny, like a magazine, that is a hot pressed paper. You can see it's very thin, it's very shiny. If I tried to paint on it, the paper would dissolve because it does not have cotton in it. So cotton's important, but the thing we know about cotton, especially if you're from my generation, is cotton shrinks. I'll tell my students all the time, they had a favorite cotton dress. It was a little mint green dress, I loved it. My mom, when I came home from school one day, I wanted to wear my green dress, and she said, you can't wear it because I washed it with hot water. And she took it out, and it was doll size. So cotton shrinks. We don't have a lot of shrinkable material anymore. They keep using fibers, polyesters added to cotton. But this paper will shrink as soon as it gets wet because it's got cotton in it. So what I'm going to do to prevent it from shrinking is tape it down. By taping the paper down, when it gets wet, it's going to puff a little, and it's going to want to shrink, but I've got control of it. I've taped it down. I'm not allowing it to shrink. And
Backtrack for 1 second.
okay,
Cold press versus hot press, because they do sell both.
yes.
Okay.
So
So is there something that you would prefer to use cold press for versus hot press, blah, 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 all that good stuff?
so they do make hot pressed watercolor paper.
Right.
And they also make it in different textures, different grains. Some of it's coarse grain, some of it's fine grain. Today I have Arches, fine grain, cold pressed 140-pound paper. If you go and you get a hot pressed paper, watercolor paper, it will still weigh 140 pounds. You always want at least 140. It also comes in 200 and 300. I believe there's a 500.
Really?
I can't see any
I have
use
some
for
300.
that.
Yeah.
I have some 300. And you need to know that it's very expensive. When you get up into 300-pound paper, it's about $35 a sheet.
Mm-hmm.
And the sheet is good sized,
Huge. Yeah.
but it's pricey. It allows the artist to make a lot of revisions. And so that would be the purpose, to get that paper. If you're starting, just get 140-pound cold press.
Absolutely.
If you get hot pressed watercolor paper, it doesn't absorb the paint. So you paint on the surface. It doesn't suck the color in. Instead, you're sliding it across the surface. I could give another demo on hot pressed paper. A great hot pressed paper that was made in Japan, that came out about 15 years ago, is U-PO paper. That's U-P-O. And it's a man-made, hand-pressed, 140-pound watercolor paper that's hot pressed. So it's shiny, and not everybody likes working on it. I love it. I'd love to do a demo on it.
Yeah.
Your work comes out totally different. So without further ado, I'm going to tape this down. I did bring other kinds of paper. I want to get started on this. And if you have questions about other paper, other brands, we'll have contact information at the end of this video. And anybody can contact me. I'd be happy to inform you more or answer any questions that may be going in your head that I'm not answering at this time. I'm using a normal masking tape. I don't worry if the masking tape has acid in it, because it's not going to stay on it. Acid makes things yellow. Acid is how paper companies can make their paper cheap. Acid breaks down wood pulp. So regular paper can be broken down with acid when they make it, and they can afford it a lot cheaper because they get more out of the wood pulp. Artists can't work on any acidic paper because it will yellow, crack, and fade. So we have acid-free cold pressed watercolor paper.
Everything should say acid-free.
Acid-free, everything should. You have all your paints should, your pigments should, anything you're using should be acid-free. And even the tape that I use when I go to frame these is a different type. It's artist tape, and it's acid-free. So no acid.
No acid unless you, oh, no.
No.
This is a family
No acid.
demo.
It's not the 60s anymore. Or
What do you mean?
70s. Or, so I asked Jody beforehand, what do you think? What do you think would be a good demo? I love this face, and I like this face. This is something I couldn't use in a show. It's not my photograph. I don't care, because this is just a demo. I don't intend to sell it. I intend to demonstrate it. And I really liked the fact that this woman is coming out of the dark. She has some, what we call lost edges. You can't see the edge of some of the parts of her.
Yeah, blends
Okay.
right into the
So it's
background.
called a lost edge, yep.
Yeah.
And when a picture is dark in the background with something emerging, that style is called chiaroscuro.
Say again.
Chiaroscuro, like chia pet,
Yeah.
scuro. So and chiaroscuro was how the Dutch masters painted. So when you look at a Vermeer, they use the chiaroscuro style. And that's spelled kind of weird. Ciascuro. Chiaroscuro. CI is in Italian. So without further ado, I have a palette here. I have my
I saw you
brushes.
wetting it, because
Yep.
this paint in your palette, there are pigments that you've used before that you've allowed to dry.
Yes,
Okay, and with some other paints like acrylics and stuff, you cannot do that
No.
because they don't reactivate.
that's
But
right.
watercolors do.
Watercolors reactivate. Some people will be aboard that I put water in them and dilute the pigment in them.
Really?
Yeah, because every time you are adding water and reusing it, you're diluting the pigments. That doesn't, for me, it doesn't affect my work because if the pigment's too light and diluted, I just add more.
I was gonna say, it doesn't sound like a problem actually.
Also, I leave my brushes in my jar, which is another
No,
no
Yeah.
for a lot of artists.
but they're not dense.
And when they are bent, I really like it because if you reverse it, you get a skinny tip.
Ah.
It's really good for eyelashes and eyeliner. And
Okay,
I made-
Mary Jane, if you're watching this, don't listen, block your ears. I'm always yapping at her because
Don't
she has
leave
these
it in
little look
there.
like hooks.
Yep,
Yeah, and she paints with them that
flip
way.
the hook. It's really good.
I'm good.
I didn't say that.
Mary Jane, don't listen, block your ears, baby.
So the colors that I have in here with watercolor, you pretty much paint what you see. With other paintings, you put colors together and paint. I'm going to just kind of tell you that I've got basic red, blue, yellow, green. I've got
I'm gonna switch our screen over to your palette
Okay.
and working surface.
I've got primary and secondary colors. This is old as the hills, so it's stained, but this is my clean mixing area to mix color. So the first thing that I'm going to do, I chose small because I wanted to get pretty complete on this. You know, get it as far as I could for the viewing audience. So the first thing I want to do is I want to place how this woman is going to fit on this page. I'm not going to do all of her for this demo, although I could shrink her and fit it all in. That's not what I'm going to be doing today. The first thing I'm going to do is eliminate the background. I'm going to eliminate all of this around her so I know artistically where she's going to fit on this page. One of the things that an artist who works in watercolor needs to know is that if there's white on the page, you have to leave the white of the paper. Because if you do choose to use white watercolor, it's called Chinese white, it makes your colors dirty. And I will show you that on a little piece of scrap, just so you know. This is how you'd make a color lighter. Suppose I have blue and I want it lighter. Well, if I add more water, it's getting very light. If I add white to lighten it, it gets very, very dirty looking, muddy. It almost is like a gross periwinkle. So see how thick the paint becomes. I don't know if you can see.
I was kind of liking it. Let me see. Let me hold it up, not get you on the computer.
So yeah, it's far more dull. It's very dirty. I only use white if I have a foggy picture. Or sometimes to show distance.
Sure.
So we're going to take, and I'm going to put a color in the background, a darker color. I'm going to go for Payne's Gray. Different pigments have different staining capabilities. There's 4 types of characteristics that watercolors have. There's transparent watercolor, granular watercolor.
What's granular watercolor?
Granular means it's grainy, yeah, like this ivory black is granular. So when you go to paint with it, you have to make sure the grains are dissolved.
All right, that's what I was going to say. You don't want
Streaks.
them in there, right?
That's right, you dissolve them over here. There's transparent, granular, opaque that you can't see through, and staining. This color that I'm choosing, this Payne's Gray, and it's P-A-Y-N-E-S, after the man who discovered the pigment, is a staining color. So I'm going to kind of be careful where I put it. But right now, I just want to figure out, like, okay, where am I going to put this person on this page? How's she going to fit? So I'm just going to kind of tell myself where I want her. So I want her in this area. I'm going to want her shoulder. I don't really want to lose that little braid thing yet. And that's my start. That's simply where I want her to fit. I also know that I've got some dark lost edges here. I'm going to kind of paint where her face is going to be, where I think it's going to be, where her pigtail may be. And that's pretty much my start for now. I use a good amount of water. I want to keep it wet so I can change things. I might put a little brown in here, warm that up a little bit, a little warmth in the background. And I might put a little cool color, like ultramarine in here. Get that a little more deep and rich. Blacks
Ultramarine is blue.
Ultramarine blue, yep. And then I'm going to dry it.
Cool.
So do you want to shut it off while I dry?
Well, sure.
Okay.
Here's the dryer. Let's take. Okay, we are back, and we took a few seconds just to dry the background.
And once you dry it, you'll notice that watercolor dries lighter than when you put it on. The next thing I'm going to do is just kind of map out where I feel her hat is. The way you work is general to specific. Generally speaking, I'm going to put it down and it will change. I'm going to use a granular color. I'm going to use ivory black, which is kind of a brown black. And I kind of see that this gray is, you know, a little light. So I don't want the dark color I put there. So I'm going to try to, can you see the grains in this?
Yeah.
I'm going to try to melt those grains a bit, because if you don't, then when you draw, they can leave dark streaks where you don't expect them. I also think that I need a little bit of purple in there. So I'm going to use a little bit of magenta with it. And kind of, there'll be a mineral reaction. Watch this, like it kind of shoots the color out. Now I'm going to go on and start. And I hold this like it's a pencil. I don't flatten it. I'm only using the tip. And I'm going to put where I think I see the hat. And it'll probably be wrong, but it's how you start. You usually get it on, it'll be wrong. Spend the rest of your time fixing it. We're kind of getting used to that. I noticed that it pops up here, so I'm going to melt some of the old paint off.
So explain, melt some of the old paint off.
So if I push water on the paint that I laid first, I can erase it. It's called a lift. And you'll see more of that as I move along, and I'll explain the lift a little bit further. So I've got it where I feel like, okay, the hat seems like it's here, but I notice it needs dark areas. So the reason I'm keeping it nice and wet is so that I can put the dark areas in and they'll slide in there nice. And I know I have, watch this, I know I have a stripe there, but look, the paper's so wet, when I go to put this little stripe in, it just dissolves. So I can either wipe my brush and erase on both sides, like that, with a dry brush. Or I can be patient and dry it a little more. Or I can kind of keep going back, and you can fuss with it. Different artists have different ways that they like to work with it. So say I do this, say this is one of the ways you find works for you, then you would do this kind of technique. I still notice it needs a little darker, so I'm going to pick up some of that background color and come on with this. And then I notice the background dips in. Well, I'll be going back to that after. So for now, when I squint through my eyelashes, it allows me to see light, medium, and dark. So when I squint, I feel like I might be okay with this. I do see shape changes, but I'm not alarmed about them at all yet. I'm going to erase this a little bit for this shape here.
She's not alarmed yet. I love it.
And goes down a little bit. And then I'm going to put that on again. You can notice the paper's getting more dry, so it's accepting this a little better. I could go back here, just for the heck of it, if I wanted to, and draw some of these shapes in a little bit better, cut into the hat, and that way the hat's a little damp, and so the edge will be soft, and she'll fade into the background a little bit better. So it's kind of a have no fear, but to have no fear, you have to practice. You have to practice and, you know, see how it works for you. And it's also good to practice if you have somebody to show you and say, yeah, go ahead, that's going to work. Don't worry about it. So I kind of have that laid in. And I feel like when I squint, oh, that's looking pretty good. I can take a little of this. I can melt it into that. you know, and put a little bit of this in here and kind of get it to start to fade into this background a bit with the edges lost, and just kind of work that. Got a couple little things here. I might go after that little seam again. And as you keep working it, notice it's staying now. Put a little shadow there. Now I'll probably lift this. A lift is what we call an erase. I want to erase it. It's a little too dark. Take that back. And then I'm going to dry this. And the reason to dry is if I go to put the purple band on, it's going to leak the way this leaked. Well, I don't want it to leak.
You don't want to leak.
So that's when you dry.
Okay, and we're going to halt you for a minute while you're drying. Okay, and when we stopped and let you dry, actually we only stopped for like 15 seconds.
Oh yeah,
or something.
if that. We can leave it on for the next one. You
I was going to say, just to get an idea maybe.
Yeah.
Because I mean, it's not, you know, it's loud for the recording, but it might be good to just leave it on once.
So I'm going to put the rim of her hat on, but I use a measuring scale. This to this is smaller than the hat by about that much. So I want to be right about here. That's where my bottom's going to be. And I'm just going to come along. Just stop. Keep going.
Okay.
All right. So I'm just kind of coming in and I'm placing where the purple is. I went around this because I might want some white.
Yeah. I was looking at that.
I could leave the tag out, but I like the tag.
Yeah, it looks cool. Yeah.
And I keep measuring to see how things fit, where they go, what's going on here. I notice it's a little dark up here, so I've added a little dark, you know, to get this to do the fade that it does, and this fades here, and then I realize, okay, I can fade it even more, and that's why I kind of stay loose for a while. Now I'm coming down and I see like, okay, we've got, you know, darkness here. So I'm just going to put some of that in. Need to work over here. And underneath this purple lies more darkness. So I'm going to kind of come in with a little bit of that. I'm not going to dry it. I want a soft edge. So it's going to melt in. This darkness is going to melt in.
So what is doing
the shadow
and black?
Purple. I'm just, well, after a while, I just grab this here. So I've got a little bit of ivory,
it's purpley black.
A little bit of Payne's gray, a little bit of black. Ivory black is very, they say it's staining. I find it forgiving. So I'm just coming along this. I want to put my background in a little more here. You notice that one of the things you'll notice is the background will continuously change as I adjust the girl. I definitely want to stay out of this blonde area because I can't get that back. So I'm going to paint the shapes between the hair, like that arrow and this arrow, and leave these little skinny marks.
So it's important to look at the negative shapes.
Oh, you have to look at the negative shapes. Right? The edge of her chin, where I will need her skin, was lining up right about here. I did this. I laid my brush down flat like this edge, and I'm using the tag or this to see where the edge of her face is.
So you pick something.
I'm saying somewhere around here, generally speaking. Yes, because for a while, it's not going to look right. I'm just going to kind of outline, and I'm guessing, educated guess. I'm going to come in and wet this so that I can draw her edge. And then the next little step that I'm going to do, I want to get this jaw down where I need it. So if I want to measure where the jaw is, it's a little bit bigger than this. So I'm just about in the right place with the jaw.
So it doesn't matter how big your painting is, you're kind of using a ratio.
That's right.
Correct?
I love that you said that. Yes, that's exactly it.
All right.
Yep, a ratio. It's the this to this is that to that.
Because I mean, you could do this on a big 16 by 20.
You could do it on a mural.
Yeah,
and
still get it right as long as you use a ratio. Okay.
And the ratio is comparing something you already committed to something you're trying to paint. I'm going to get this purple darker now. And the reason I'm getting it darker is it is darker. And I'm going to come right across and I'm going to show you that little lift technique again. I feel like it's here. I want to be kind of strong with my paint. You'll notice I load up with water a lot because water is the way I can keep it wet and manipulate it better and manipulate it longer. So I'm kind of coming there, and there's my vanished edge again. I want that to keep vanishing, so I'm going to keep coloring out here, keep that soft and melty. In the end, I'll just paint the background and it'll look better. I can bring this in because the longer you paint and get more on your paper, the more you see what you need to adjust. And that's another reason why we don't lock in right away. I do notice that there's some darkness here. I could probably, and I'm using the Payne's gray, probably slap a little here and here, down under there, even though it's a little dark. I'm gonna let that melt and dry a little bit. And I do want to shape this little, I love this little shape of the hat here. So I want to accentuate that and this little round corner that it has here and kind of get around her hair. So that's that. I'm going to dry it again. If you want, you can leave it on. We'll just show how quick.
Yeah, because it really is only for a few seconds.
And what I watch is that the watercolor gets lighter and that it gets very dull. And the paper tries to shrink and puffs up, and I'll know it's dry when it stops puffing and lays flat again. And see it getting dull and it's laying flat. I'm not sure if you can see that on the camera. So now I'm just going to take and I'm going to put a general face color. One thing I want to do is measure the face. It's this to this is the bottom of the purple to that. This to this is that to that. So my face is just about where it needs to be. Now I'm going to take, you could go, well, she has flesh. Yeah, they do. They make a flesh color. Kind of weird. It's kind of dull. I put it where there was a little purple because I'm okay with that. I'm going to use vermilion, a little bit of this reddish warm red, and warm her skin tone up a little. I'm using a ton of water because I'm back to guessing. First things first, is there any white I need to look out for? Not really, because the white of the eye is really small and I can achieve that in a different way. So first things first, I'm going to paint this in.
So what color is white? Did you use
I
white,
used
vermilion?
no white at
No
all.
white.
Flesh,
Flesh.
which is actually called
Oh,
flesh,
flesh.
and vermilion.
Flesh and vermilion.
If,
Okay.
And I like those two colors. They seem, you know, flesh is a weird, it's kind of flat and weird, but it can work pretty nice. You know, as long as you keep it diluted with water, it should look okay.
Yeah, that looks good.
I'm coming in like this. I think that her jaw is a little bit lower, so I'm going to stretch it a little bit this way. And I'm going to stretch it a little this way. Again, erasing out some of the black. What's nice is she's got shadow on this side of her face. So I'm going to use a little brown with a little ivory black. And while it's nice and wet, I'm going to come in and say, okay, this is where shadows need to be. So the eye is recessed in, the edge of the nose. I've ended up with a triangle on over here, triangle of light. I'm coming like this. I notice under the nose is kind of like that. The lips are sitting here. And so I'm kind of just placing the features of the face. I'm going to add a little of the warmth of the vermilion over here. Everything's nice and wet. I'll do a lift on that a little bit. I'm going to add a little here because I know there's some warmth in there.
A little Botox. Oh, Botox over
Oh,
here.
take it. A little red on the end of the nose. And what's nice about vermilion, it's a pigment that shoots other colors out. So it actually kind of lifts what I have underneath. And I need that because this now needs to move over. So I can actually use it right on this, leave it a second, and it will eat through the black that I had there. And there it goes. So it's a little bit better there.
And the reason you know this is because of all the experience.
Practice, practice, practice.
Practice, practice, practice.
And so I feel as though, okay, generally speaking, I'm doing pretty good here as far as measuring.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I'm going to go in and get a darker black. It's called lamp black. And I'm going to start playing around with the edge of this. You'll notice it's quite dark. And I'm just kind of coming out here And I'm also going to put some in here. And it's smearing. It's very smeary because the paper that I'm working on is wet. But I want that smear because that's going to give me soft edges that I need. And notice how dark it is. It's very dark.
Yeah.
A lot of people would be like, she's wrecking it. But I'm not.
You know, do you find
Yes,
as a
not working.
teacher that, especially adult students, not necessarily children, but adult students think that everything's supposed to come out right the first time. Every single
Yeah.
piece they do is got to be a masterpiece.
One of the most difficult things to assure people of is that you've got to get general to specific. You've got to get a general idea of how things fit in, and they're never going to be where they're really going to end up. As you can see, everything keeps changing. And then you get specific. I feel as though her nose is going to need to be longer, but I want to do things wrong. When I demo, I like to do things wrong because
Yeah, it's okay.
the viewer
Yeah.
will learn more watching me revise and correct, and probably get a little more confidence to say, well, hers was wrong, and she showed me that I could do a lift, or that I could slide it, or stain it, or change it, or move it.
Very important, very important.
I'm going to actually turn the piece sideways because it's good to change it. If you can, it's good to change your piece around and see it from different views. So when I do this, I'll actually go upside down. Going upside down is a great way to see shape. So
yeah, that looks good.
there you go.
See, you got a
So
bird idea.
I've got it upside down. And right away, I can see if there's anything I need to adjust. I definitely want to get in here and put a little more dark and tweak out this little shape here, little jaw, this, that, and then look, we're back up into the lost space here, not lost in space, lost space. And I can actually see as I study it more that her hat is coming down in here a bit too. I'm kind of doing a little bit of this, so I'm coercing this around. I may even grab a little bit of it and get this a little darker now. I feel okay. I'm getting confident that these values, light, medium, and dark, are working the way I want them to. Here's that little black thing. Is it important to have it identical? No, but I like the suggestion of it. I need a smaller brush, and I need drier paint, because when you try to draw, you need to have dry paint. And by dry, I don't mean totally dry. I mean not soaked, drier. Yep. So I'm just going to kind of do this. I'm not worried about the brand as much as, okay, let's put some really cool shapes in here and suggest that this is a tag. And I kind of feel good about that. You know, maybe a little bit of this. Maybe I'll add a little bit more than the real tag had, just to get it to convey what I'm trying to convey. Go back in and get some purple and water and just kind of bring this out like that. Okay. Add a little there. I also see that I could do a lift along this to make it look like it turns a little. See how that's, I've just taken a dry brush, drying it off.
Do you ever dab it with the?
Never.
Never.
It's too unpredictable and it could go out of control.
Yep.
If I start doing this, it may do it somewhere I don't want it. So no. So I'm going to dry the face so that I can put the features on. And this to me is the fun part because it's the detail.
The detail.
And that's where she's finally going to look right.
Yeah.
I could do this all day and night.
And that's for the watercolor. It's definitely the black.
Oh yeah.
And that's for the
You see the kind of water is my friend, water is my friend, water. And if they aren't picking up on it enough, I'll do one with them. And I start splashing more water on their face. And they can't.
Yeah, I'm sure they do.
All right. So once I went upside down, I can see easily her eyes are very uneven. This eye, when I look at it, isn't really even an eye. I'm going to work on this shape here of light. If I get that shape of light correct, she'll look correct. She'll look correct. So again, I'm using my thin brush. I notice this light line leans a little different than I said. That it does come down from here, the way I said. that this black needs to be coerced over a little bit. So I wet it up and start to soften it, and over it goes, and then this does this, and this does that. I want to kind of get everybody melting around and obeying me a little bit better. I'm going to use a little bit of brown, because brown's nice and soft for this color here. A little bit of brown in there, a little bit like this, straight across for that eyeball, just like this. Then I feel like, okay, that's kind of translated. Right above the eye is not light. You think it's light, but it's not light.
No.
It's lighter, but it's not light.
Just for a time check, you're around 45.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Oh, I gotta.
Well, we don't want you to. We don't want you to fly. I just want you to.
So now I'm gonna put the eye on. The eye, this eye, the corner is here. I went right across, like, okay, that little corner seems to be across from this, generally speaking. It is, usually they're one eye apart, which it is. So I can be like, okay, I feel like I can go, I'm looking at this triangle really and saying, okay, this triangle, this could use a little more shadow so that I can see it better. And then I'm just going to come in and go, all right, you are here. You are shaped like this. Then I've got something else going on that looks like that. Then I've got something else going on that looks like this. And I've got the iris, which is flattened off the bottom.
The iris is the colored
The
part
iris,
of the eye.
that's right.
The
Thank you,
pupil
Joni.
is the black part of the eye.
Yeah. And then I've got a little dark here. So, let me get that iris over here a little more. It's cut off, and I see it because the skin underneath here is red-ish. Now I'm going to go and accentuate that a little bit for now. I'm also going to accentuate this. I'm going to accentuate this because they're all going to melt down in a few minutes. And by melt down, I mean I'm going to fade them out more. This is also helping me place things where they belong and see colors that relate to each other throughout the piece. So up we come. This under here, I've exaggerated quite a bit. I'll put the mouth on. Typically now I dry it again, but we'll get this mouth on here. I've got some different reds shoved up in that area. Oop, that's not a good red. I picked up rose red, but I'm going to use rose red and magenta and burnt sienna because lips, we think red, but really they aren't.
Yeah.
So, and lips go from the corner of from the pupil of the eye. And I'm just going to suggest them for now that, like, okay, they're generally speaking, they're here. The bottom is something like this, generally speaking. And that means, check this out, that I've got to lower her chin a little bit more. Look at how dark that is. You scared yet?
Nothing you do scares me because
Oh,
I know
good.
you can fix it no matter what.
And it's that, you know, go, thank you, Joni.
Well,
It's a kind of go, you know, fix as you go kind of thing here. So I feel like, okay, we're kind of good there. I want to get this hair lifted off. I'm going to use a flat brush. Flat brush is just like it sounds. It has a flat tip like this, just flat. I'm going to get water and I'm going to erase where I'm going to want her hair because I notice it's a little bit closer to the eye. And I knew this would happen, which is why I stayed loose and didn't really commit to what was going on over here. If you notice, it kind of changes the shape of her face a little. And now I'm just going to go in and I got to dry it because I'm going to draw the eyeball. And I can't work on it wet because it will melt and fuzz out.
we'll all blend together.
Yep, all blend together. All right, up we go. I'm gonna use my little brush. I don't want a lot of water. I notice that the eye is kind of in a green family and I like that. So I'm going to put a little green and a little burnt sienna together because they look good together for a green eye. And I'm going to notice that, okay, the eye is flat here. And then it just kind of comes up. And the reason that I see the color of the eye is because other parts are dark. So this here is dark. Then this eyelashes go like this. They go right down. They definitely line the eye. There's a little piece of dark here. There's a piece of dark here. And again, it's very sharp. It's very dark. I'm going to go backwards with it. I'm going to do some lifting. Remember, lifting is erasing. Trying to get that a little bit lighter. And this to me is the fun part because it's the specifics of it. And I think they're really fun. Yeah, now I can use this that I put on here, get it activated with water. And now I can slide it around where I want it. And I can say, okay, the whole reason you see the eye is because this is this color underneath. So now I can start melting this. And so now the facial features are starting to get a little bit better in color. This here is going to be problematic, but there's solutions for that. This looks okay. And then I want to put the nostril on. The eye is a little exaggerated. I'll be back into that in a few minutes. It's way too dark for what we have going on here. But I want to kind of get it in and take it off. We're here. Generally speaking, the nose seems to be, oopsie. The nose seems to be, whoa. Whoa. Seems to be a little bit like this. I really don't see what's going on the other side because of the shadow. So I'm going to make it shadow. That shadow goes right onto this upper lip. So we get that going on, and then it comes off here and goes under the bottom. And where it comes on this upper lip, it comes over here is a line and goes where I initially said, right there. And I'm going to turn it around and start some adjustments. One of the things that I notice is that this has to go up. So I'm going to bring this up a little closer to the eye now. I mean, a little closer to the hat so that all these features fit in the way they should. Everybody's lining up the way it should. This shadow here, this shadow all along this. And then I'm just going to kind of play around with what's going on here. I've got some really nice light on her face. I'm going to stain and let it raw sienna sit a second. And then I'm going to put in the values stronger than they are so that I can go back and erase. And that way you kind of play around with those colors little by little. And then I'll get that off of you. Put it on, take it off. So it's like get it on so it stains the page, and then remove it.
So you're adjusting the value.
Exactly. Value and color. Yep, melting them. I know that this needs to be a lot lighter. Okay. And that it pops out a little differently than what I said. So I can tweak that. And that it has a little bit of something going on in here that I can see. This here is like that. And then for the sake of our time, I'm going to get down in here and work quickly down the bottom. I'll slap her hair in. Of course, I know I go, oh, yellow. I'm going to use raw sienna, which is going to look very, very dark. But I'm doing the same thing that I always do. I put it on and I take it off. So it's lightly stained.
Nice.
And kind of picks up her color. I noticed that she's got a couple other marks that places I can put it on, but instead I'm going to go down here and I'm going to start describing more of why I see the edge of her face. And this is where she should start to come together a little bit more. Here, here. Sorry,
catch,
Joni.
good catch.
Oh, I'm multi-talented.
It's just one part of her multifaceted personality.
Thank you.
I love
Yeah, let me see. I'm not real happy with the eye, so I'm gonna bring that eye down a little bit. Got a little high. So what's cool is I can take it and I can dissolve it. I really think it needs to be softer looking. And I definitely want to get some of this shadow underneath it so that she looks, so it matches up with the other eye. Obviously, we need them to match their eyeballs. This has gone a little more than I said. So by softening that and coming across this, we have a little bit better control over what the shape is doing. A little here, a little there. Now I can soften this out. Away it goes. Some here, some there. And then I'll go right in again and say, okay, this lip is dark here. Then the lip switches to a little bit there. And a little tiny bit there. I'm going to move this hair in even a little bit more. Just going to kind of mess around with it. And I want to put some lip color on.
You do a lip gloss.
Pretty much. I noticed that like she just has this, they're kind of darkish at first. So if I put that on and then I play with this a little bit, I do want to notice where her lip is lighter and darker. That matters. I'm going to do a lift here. The lift is the erase. Reminding you of that. It's a little fatter than what I said. I also want to bring this down. So like I say, I want to show you that errors can be fixed.
Mm-hmm.
I even need to move the middle of the nose thing. So just kind of want to reassure the viewer that, okay, we can move things around. You have a measure of safety here in this.
And I think with watercolors, that's important to know because they're considered one of the most difficult of mediums.
They are.
So the fact that you can manipulate and make adjustments and corrections, I think is important.
Yes, yes it is.
You're also at 1
Okay,
p.m.
so we'll stop.
I was going to say, only because you have a time crunch, we'll keep you here another 2 hours if you can do it. But I know you have.
I'll just put a little of this on because I know that it will help her face look better. And so when we do the wrap up, you can be like, okay, she got that pretty good.
She got that very good. That was awesome.
Here, and like I say, we'll just kind of slap a little bit of this on. I can come back in here and get her hairs hairy.
Her hairy hairs.
And that is just by doing a little bit of this and going around the light water. And then I like to smooth the background. You know what, now that you've seen me play with it a lot, now you can watch how I can really
Smooth
incorporate it as part of, okay, this piece so that it's got a lot of loose marks the way a watercolor should, but it also is smoother because if it's not, it's going to be a real distraction.
Well, you know what? That's what I was just going to say to you. The fact that it's smooth is nice. Usually you can see the strokes from one layer to the other. Guess you really don't. Is that because there's so many layers?
It's because I got the layers on and then just dissolved a lot of what I had. I think I'm answering what you're asking.
Yeah. Well, see how you can see this, and then
yes.
Usually, if someone's doing a watercolor, you can see the brush marks.
Okay.
And they'll go and put another layer on. And you can see those brush marks.
So it's probably a style thing more than anything. Different people paint different ways. I really wanted to get some of this on because it's just so pretty.
It really is a nice piece.
Yeah. Oh, thank you.
You're welcome. And I mean, considering that, you had such a small amount of time to do it, you really got the message across, which is nice.
And then her little braid, her extra little braid is there.
So you're really kind of using that background to create
everything.
Shape,
yes. Yep. Just get this in. And I do want to put some hair color there. I'll probably play with a little brown, a little more sienna because it's a little darker. So I'll put it on, lift it back. Same on this. I can use the same colors. I can cut in. And I did want to show, and then I can get some light here where she has it. I did want to show a scraping. So I want to show that you can scrape things out. Would you happen to have an X-Acto? Or something scrapey?
Scrapey and scrappy.
Scrapey and scrappy.
Yeah, I would be afraid to give this to
That's
some of my
perfect.
students. They're like, okay, I know this work.
So suppose I want to get a little bit of white in her eye. I'll just take this X-Acto knife and go like this. Just kind of scratch it slowly. And there comes the light.
Cool.
And then I have the light, so the eye becomes a little more 3D.
So you're actually scratching the paper off
I
of it?
scratched it right out. Yep.
Don't listen, kids.
I scratched that out a little bit.
Cool.
I also noticed that, you know, she needs a little bit of light here. Her eyelashes are a little too intense. I'm going to knock those back a little bit, like calm down. Make this dark a little bit darker because it is. And this definitely has a fade, and this is softer. And so, as you can see, as the piece comes along more and more, I start tweaking and getting it more and more adjusted.
Absolutely.
So,
awesome. Thank you.
what I will do is work on this at home.
And then you'll show us.
And I'll show you. Yeah.
And we'll post it. We'll get Debbie to post it.
All right. So, thank you. That was wicked fun.
That was a lot of fun. Will you turn it upside down again?
Yes.
Because
Let me
when you do,
let me dry it. Okay,
Okay.
so it doesn't go
so
anywhere.
it doesn't fall anywhere.
Like I say, right now she's messy, and I just want to shoot a little bit more. When I come in later, I'll just knock this down and use it to warm the
So
face.
even though you've dried the paint, it can be reactivated with water, and you can still move it
Right.
around.
Because obviously I don't want sharp edges.
Yeah.
So I'll just kind of come in and soften things, and I'll be moving things around. Things that probably not exactly where I need them to be or where they are in the information. So that's kind of where we're going to leave off today. I definitely want to fix one thing before I turn it around, because I can see how off this eye is.
And I think, too, when we turn the work upside down, if you're right-handed, it means you're left brain dominant, and vice versa. So when you turn it upside down, you're forcing the other hemisphere of the brain to kick in more.
That's right. And you also stop naming it because your brain doesn't understand what the shape is.
It's not analyzing.
So, right. It's not analyzing.
That's right. That's right.
I'm not happy with this eye. So
that eye is gone.
I wiped that eye out here because I didn't care for its shape.
Yeah.
But this is where I'm at.
Yeah,
about
that
an
is
hour.
extremely cool.
And thank you. That needs a lot of playing. And I'll play with it.
Play around with it.
Probably has about another half an hour to completion.
Well, even at that, I think that's absolutely amazing. I don't know if I could do. I've done work and I finished a piece like in 4 or 5 hours. I don't know if I've ever done it in an hour.
Oh.
So you're fast.
It's kind of small,
That's all right. Yeah.
So that helps. And then just so you know, I did bring, suppose I wanted to use it, I brought mats.
Mats.
So I was just
Oh,
gonna
yes.
slap a mat
I
on
saw
top of it
mats.
and be like,
Where did I see
okay.
mats?
I brought these, but I
Oh,
don't think I
those
got
are-
one small enough.
Oh.
You could.
Okay. Yeah, use the
Mat it.
mat to help with the mat.
Oh, you can't see well.
You can from
But
this
yeah, and you could, mat it, get the mat the right size.
Get the right size mat.
And
you
so,
can use the mat to help with the composition.
yep, and when you see it next, everything will be adjusted and it will be matted.
Okay, so we will look forward to that. Now, I know you take students, or at least you have a waiting list
I do.
The waiting list. How can people get a hold of you if they have questions? And don't be afraid to call her and ask her.
That's right. I'll answer your questions.
will.
I'll answer that phone. I'm
I'm
going to give you my cell, which is 603-382. I'm sorry, 603.
Oh, sure. You'll answer her that call.
819-1578. That's my cell. And the studio number is 603-382-5332. And you can reach me at either. Please leave a message.
And it's Kneeland Fine Arts
At AOL.com.
AOL.com. I have a website.
And my website is www.susankneeland.com. Feel free to go on. There's a contact page. It's a little overloaded. I'm in revision with the site this year for 2021. So what you see this month, in the next couple of months, will be changing.
Totally awesome.
Thank you, Joni. Thank you.
As always, it's always fun and informative.
Thank you.
Yeah, so very welcome. So until next time, and we're actually going to have Susan. GHAA has a new program called Meet the Artist. Okay, where our GHAA members will be interviewed and showing you some of their favorite works and answering some questions for you. Okay, so look and make sure you join us for that. Okay, next time.